I've been doing Vipassana meditation for like 12 and a half years. I've completed 27 courses, and something that's been really fun is that my psychic abilities have improved. So in this video, I thought it'd be fun just to share about some of those experiences. To start, to be clear, this won't work. Like, you're not going to develop psychic powers through Vipassana if you're attached to the idea of developing that, because by definition, if you're attached to something, you're not practicing Vipassana correctly in that moment. So think of these things as a byproduct of what can happen as you develop through Vipassana, and only do it if it feels right for you. So the first one I'll share happened when I was going to a course at the center in Northern California. I think it was 2017. And I was using the ride board to catch a ride with somebody who was driving up from San Francisco, where I was living at that time. I was communicating with a couple different people, and one of them was this guy, Stefan, who was down to give me a ride, and I really appreciated it. But then logistically, like, something just didn't work out. So I ended up catching a ride with somebody else. While I was at that course, I was serving. So I was like a volunteer, and I was in the manager role. When you're the manager, you sit up front, like close to the teacher, so you can kind of have a view of the whole hall. And one time, like midway through the course, I saw this guy just like walking up the aisle to go to his like meditation area. And something in my head, and it feels like it came in on the left side, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. It was like a voice just said, "That's Stefan." Because I didn't know what he looked like. I wasn't sure what it meant or anything. It was just like this kind of interesting thing. And then after the course, I ended up catching a ride with him. We were talking in the car, and he started sharing about how he was a recovered alcoholic and how he'd struggled in the course, and he really didn't feel like he got it. And it was then that I felt like I understood why the universe or energies of the highest good, whatever, were pointing me toward him. And so I started to tell him about how, like, I used to have a huge binge drinking problem for a really long time. This was actually, I think, maybe a year before I got totally sober, but I'd really scaled my drinking back by that time because, like, through Vipassana, I just no longer craved it in the way that I had before. So I was able to tell him, you know, like, this is how bad it used to be for me. And I never did AA or any kind of dedicated program, just sort of like as a byproduct of the Vipassana, I started to crave alcohol a lot less. As of right now, as I'm recording this, I've been totally sober for over 7 years. And he even said something like that as we were talking. He said that he'd been hoping to find, you know, like recovered addicts, recovered alcoholics who had done Vipassana that he could talk to. So I think that's probably why I was sort of nudged to connect with him. This one was weird and I don't understand it to this day, but it happened. So years ago when I was living in New York, I went on this trip up to Hunter Mountain, this like ski lodge. And it was supposed to be this event for entrepreneurs like I am and like tech investors to hang out and network or whatever. And I was never into events like that, but I went, and there was like a bus that people could take up from New York City. So I was on this bus, and there was a guy, this white guy, across the aisle from me, like maybe a seat or two back. And I overheard his conversation for the duration of the trip, which was a couple hours long. And he was talking about how he'd worked in East Africa, and I had spent time in East Africa too when working on seeds. I didn't interact with him in any way. I don't think I even caught his name. Fast forward maybe 2 years or something like that. I've left New York. I'm now in San Francisco, although I don't have like a dedicated home. I was staying at a friend's mom's house, and my friend tells me that this guy, Paul, who's an entrepreneur, is gonna come stay there as well. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I knew that it was gonna be this dude. I knew that that was the dude. And then it was. And I didn't like him. He seemed arrogant. He was kind of disrespectful to me. He was definitely disrespectful to like my friend's mom, who was being generous enough to let him crash there. I didn't like him. I didn't feel particularly unsafe, I guess, while he was also staying in the same house as I was, and it was like just the two of us there. But it definitely didn't feel like the energies definitely didn't feel great. There was some negativity. So I don't know what that was. I don't think it was trying to protect me, because I hadn't gotten necessarily like red flags from him the first time I overheard his conversation on this bus years before. And I didn't tell him or her that I knew it was going to be him. It was kind of interesting, but I still don't know like what it was for. This one was trippy and it helped me out so much. So this was in, I want to say like late March. No, like around maybe April of 2020. And I had just done this thing to help this girl that I met at a Vipassana course, actually. I helped her buy ether on an exchange because she didn't like want to try to learn how to use the exchange herself. And as I was doing it, I understood I was doing this thing I have a tendency to still do. It's from a sankara of just like giving too much, putting too much of myself out there, or offering too much to people who just aren't receiving it or like recognizing it for the value that it has. I think a lot of women especially are conditioned to do this by society. And the effect is that we just get so depleted. So it's something I'm hoping is gonna release through Vipassana soon. So I did this thing to help this girl, and as I was doing it, I understood that it was too much. But then there was this surprising byproduct. So like I'm a former like Wall Street trader, and I started buying Bitcoin in 2013. And I've been able to make these profitable cryptocurrency trades over the years, but because I've like given so much through seeds, I haven't seen the sort of wealth that other people who were greedier have seen in that sector. And that's fine. I think it's all part of the path. But in that moment, it was so interesting because I swear, y'all, something told me, again, it felt kind of like a voice inside my head or something, but not entirely recognizable as a voice, but something told me, and I knew it wasn't me, it wasn't like Rachel. Something told me that I needed to buy ether like now, like right then. And at that time, you know, like COVID had just started. There was a lot of uncertainty, especially in the US, about what Trump was going to do. The stock market got hammered and there was this economic uncertainty. But I just knew that that was the time to start buying as much ether as I could. And so I listened and I started loading up, and then it really started to go up. And then like a year and a half later, it reached all-time highs of over $4,800 a coin. So it was like a 48x trade, which was terrific. I've never had this happen before or since. It really was because it felt like I was channeling, like I was more open and I could receive this message to really commit myself to getting even more involved than I had been, because I'd owned it for years. But when I got that message, I started trying to load up, and I was so grateful that it worked out as well as it did. It really helped me, and it really helped seeds. The last one I'll share is even trippier in a way and sort of like less directly psychic. As I'd been developing through Vipassana, what seemed to be past life recall really started to improve. And I worked with practitioners and I got these validations from these various practitioners. But the trippiest past life that I saw, and I made a whole video about this if you feel like hearing the story in more detail, but I saw this past life that seemed to be at the fall of Atlantis. I still feel a lot of grief like when I tune into it now. I think that there are probably a lot of beings like me who were there at that time who are now incarnated as humans, because I think we're like completing a cycle that began back then. We have to integrate these energies that were introduced back then. And I think the colloquial term to describe that is like toxic masculine energy. So we're at this point at which we have to heal masculine and feminine energies so they come back into balance so that humanity can progress. And I really think that energy that is now referred to as toxic masculine energy is the current iteration of what was introduced at the fall of Atlantis. So the trippy, like real life verifiable thing was that I had this past life memory that showed up in a session, and it seemed like it was at the fall of Atlantis. And the part of it that I was like most embarrassed about, or like felt the most trouble trying to discuss, was something I totally didn't understand, which was that I was closer to the attackers because I'd volunteered to help them. That meant I'd like disconnected from a telepathic connection with my people, I guess. But it meant that I knew what the attackers were really up to a little bit before everybody else did. And so I made this decision. This is the part that I totally didn't understand. I made this decision to dissolve my energy, to put it into the attackers, to try to shift them enough so that they wouldn't destroy everything. And it didn't work, and a lot of people died. And I think I felt a lot of guilt about that for like many years, and I think I've only recently healed it in the last few years, again, through the work that I'm doing with Vipassana. Anyway, so long story short, I'm catching a ride from Los Angeles, where I was living at this time, to go to Northern California for another Vipassana course. When I went to meet the guy who was offering me the ride, we'd had this super friendly exchange in advance over email, and we hugged when we first met, and there was this immediate, strong, mutual sense of dislike for like no apparent reason. And I remember thinking like, oh no, like how are we gonna be in a car together for 5 hours? But we went to pick up the Hungarian woman, and it was cool. In the car, I felt compelled, for reasons I didn't understand, to talk about this trippy Atlantis past life. And the girl told me that she felt she had one at the fall of Atlantis as well, where she thought her mother had sacrificed herself. She had a lot of grief about losing her mother. She also told me that Atlanteans had some technology called the Merkaba that they could use to dissolve themselves. And then the dude, the driver, the guy that was giving us the ride, had a Merkaba on a chain around his neck. Whoa, I just realized something else. I think this thing on the wall actually is a Merkaba too. I'm like renting this house that is furnished and this thing is just like there. Do you see it? It's similar anyway. I don't know if it's identical though. The other thing that was interesting with that thing on the wall here is that back in like March and April, I did a Vipassana self course like at this house and I documented it so you can like watch the video if you feel like it. But one thing I noticed is that I gravitated to meditating in that spot and my dog kept wanting to sit there too. It was like we were fighting over this one spot on the couch underneath that thing hanging on the wall. Julia, the girl, later told me that he was on the other side. This guy had been on the attacker's side. That was why we felt this mutual sense of dislike for no reason that seemed like it had any root in this life. And I think that was totally right. I think Julia was right about that. So that's all I have for right now. I hope this was kind of interesting to you. I'm fascinated by this sort of stuff. I hope that more people find Vipassana and start developing through it and getting benefits like I've seen and so many others have seen. And I think perhaps the biggest hurdle getting in the way of that is the current economic system, because it forces us to trade our time for money, often doing jobs we don't like. And so it can be very hard to get away to sit a Vipassana course for 10 days. So I started a new economic system called Seeds. It allows giving people to build wealth through helping others. Make a gift to help someone in need and you'll receive an equal or greater value of seeds and thanks. So your gift is already like monetarily of no cost to you. And then if and when seeds go up in value, you can actually build wealth because you were kind. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Oh, look, there's a cute one. Oh, look, he's so cute.